Okay, so this is the regular council meeting of Monday, May 10th, 2021. We are continuing with the recording of this meeting. The first item is adoption of the minutes. There's two sets of meeting minutes, the Governance and Operations Committee meeting of April 26, 2021, and the regular council meeting of April 26, 2021. The recommendation before you is to adopt both sets of minutes as circulated. Do I have someone to make that motion?
So moved, Robert.
Do I have someone to second that motion?
So moved.
I will.
Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, thank you. Is there any errors or omissions in the meeting minutes that are seen by any of council?
No.
Seeing none? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you very much. So, Mum Stop the Harm. And Ms. Mkaisik, can I please confirm how much time we've allocated for each of our delegations?
10 minutes for presentation and then some time for questions from council.
Okay, perfect.
Should there be any?
Great. So I'm going to call Mum Stop the Harm opioid crisis to speak. I am not sure who is speaking, so I'll open the floor to you to go for it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Tammy McLean. I am a member of Mum Stop the Harm, and I'm here with four of my colleagues, Amber Strukins from Anchors, Lisa Kavaloff from Redone, which is the Rural Empowered Drug Users Network, and then Sheila Adcock from CDS. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Whoops, hold on. Technical difficulties. How about I share the screen first? There we go. And are you able to see my screen with the slides on it right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just a little bit about Mum Stop the Harm. We are a network of Canadian families that have been impacted by substance use related harms and deaths, and we're advocating for to end substance use stigma, harms and death. And there's over 1,700 members in British Columbia and Ontario. We're all across Canada, but the vast majority come from those two provinces. Wanted to also share a little bit about my my personal story in this is I'm born in Trail, not raised in Trail, but my family is certainly from the area. And when I was in my 30s, my mother ended up developing a substance use disorder and has impacted our lives for the last, she's 80 now, and luckily she hasn't passed away. But it has impacted all of our lives within my family. And it's only recently that we found out that Mum had some significant trauma history in her youth. And that is one of the risk factors to going on to developing substance use disorder. One of the main, not all people have had a trauma history, but it's one of the main risk factors. And so in saying that, you know, our typical image of who we think are substance users don't include an 80-year-old woman. And certainly I never thought that my family could be impacted by this, but I am here to tell you that if my family can, any family can. And so this issue is very close to my heart, and I'll leave it at that. So we are here with four asks. One is to urge Trail City Council to petition the Government of Canada to declare the overdose crisis a national public health emergency. And Mum Stop the Harm has some language that we're happy to share with City Council on what that might look like. We're also asking to work with us as a coalition of not just us, but many other stakeholders in this to help us plan and build an overdose prevention site here in Trail. We also are looking for City Council to continue to address issues of homelessness and the homeless population, including security, safety, stigma, and then overnight and daytime accommodations. And then to recognize the expertise and rights of people with living or lived experience, and that Lisa will speak to that further down the road. So I wanted to share a little bit about illicit toxicity deaths in British Columbia. So this first map is, as you can see on the very right-hand side, how the jump has been in illicit deaths in British Columbia. So We had over 1,716 deaths in 2020. And COVID has definitely had an impact in that, in that the drug supply has become increasingly toxic as well. People are isolating to try and stay, not get COVID. And so we're finding a lot more people are dying of opioid deaths. Interestingly, over 60% of the overdose deaths right now are happening with people involved in the trades and recreational users. And so, fentanyl and fentanyl analogs are being found in our drug supply. As I mentioned, increasingly toxic. We're finding fentanyl in all sorts of the substances these days. So cocaine, ecstasy, crystal meth, well, maybe not marijuana. There's some rumor of that, but nothing that's been substantiated. But pretty well any substance that people are using that is purchased off the street has fentanyl in it. And now we're finding benzodiazepines that are not approved in Canada in the drug supply as well. If we drill this down to our little area of the West Kootenays, in 2020, the number actually is 19 here, but that number has been increased to 20 deaths. And in the first 20 deaths in the Kootenay boundary, and in the first 3 months of 2021, we have had 8 deaths in the Kootenay boundary in the first 3 months. The first 3 months within the province, there have been 500 people who have died of the poison drug supply in British Columbia. I wanted to just do a little bit about the neurochemistry of addiction and talk a little bit about dopamine. There's a whole course here, so this is like the very brief Coles Notes, but when we look at what we need in order to survive, dopamine is one of our basic bodily needs along with food and water. Dopamine is responsible for all kinds of motivation, bonds between humans, mother, child, how we stay connected with our community and with our families. And when people use external sources of drugs, which are high in dopamine, they lose their own ability to produce dopamine within their own bodies. And when we look at cravings for drugs, cravings override even the need for food and water. So drug seeking, because they're looking for dopamine through the drugs, is even more than just the basic needs that we need to get through the day. And that cravings can last up to 2 years after the drugs have stopped. So this is a very powerful chemistry that changes in the brain when a person is addicted. So if you can look here in a normal day, we could actually measure about 50 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine. This is a really a normal day. And then when a person has a really bad day, when you just don't even want to get out of bed and everything is wrong in the world, it drops down by only 10 deciliters, nanograms per deciliter. On a really good day, so this is, from, if you're having the best golf game and every swing is a hole in one, or you're up in the ski hill and every turn is the most beautiful and it's gorgeous, we only bump up to 100 nanograms per deciliter. What happens when people start using substances, marijuana, alcohol, and heroin, it jumps up to 700 to 900 nanograms per deciliter, and then with methamphetamine, up to 1,100 milligrams of nanograms per deciliter. We're not meant to live up there. And so when we see drug-seeking behavior, this is what is happening, is people are trying to fulfill that need in order to survive, because the immature parts of their brains are saying, if I don't get this dopamine, I am going to die. And that is what their bodies are telling them. So we're meant to be in this very narrow between 50 and 100 nanograms. External sources are giving up to 1,100. So a lot of the behaviors we're seeing is related to that survival mode that kicks in. So there's a lot more that I could say about this, but that's kind of dopamine 101. One of the main antidotes to this is connection to other people and community. And so I will leave it at that and hand over the presentation to Lisa, who can talk a little bit more about her experience. Lisa, just let me know when you want me to change the slides. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I think you guys can hear me, I hope. Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Lisa Kavanaugh, and I'd like to share a little bit of story of my life. I was actually born here in Trail. Both my parents actually were from this area and were born here as well. Unfortunately, though, my parents got divorced when I was 4, and as a result, I moved away. I did used to come back here in the summer, though, to visit my dad all the time. And back in 1987, my brother was killed out on the highway here. Neither of my parents dealt with that very well, which in turn didn't help me very much either. I ended up being taken away from my mom and placed into child welfare at the age of 15 because my dad couldn't care for me either. I didn't want to lose my mom or my parents, so I chose to try and look after myself. So I went to the streets at the age of 16 and spent almost 2 years there. I managed to get out of that, and I thought that was it for me. I thought I'm free, I'm okay. But what I didn't know is being in child welfare left me very lonely with no family support. This made me very vulnerable and an easy target to be abused. Later in life, when I was 20, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And I was put onto opioids for pain management. I was on them for many years without any problems. It wasn't until that I left an abusive relationship and ended up homeless in Vancouver at the age of 30. That's when my trauma and substance use collided together. I never thought this would ever happen for me in my life. The child welfare system is flawed. It leaves young adults broken with no hope for their future. When I see a young person here in Trail homeless, the first thing that pops in my mind is what kind of trauma happened here. I can assure you that these people do not want this for themselves and are deeply, deeply hurting inside. Substance use is an actual medical condition, and we deserve to be treated with respect like any other medical condition. We need a safe supply of drugs now. We need low barrier housing with harm reduction services that doesn't feel like a mental institution. The war on drugs has been a disaster. When will our lives matter? I truly hope our government would care enough about our lives before it's too late and we all die from toxic drugs. I work with Redone, and our mission statement to our members is to help create an environment that supports the dignity, respect, health, safety, and human rights of current and former drug users. Thank you very much.
First
I'm sorry, I don't know if I have to read anything else before this. Sorry, I can't sort of see
Thank you,
right.
Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. That was really generous to share that with this group today. My name's Amber. Thanks for having me here tonight. I come to you from Anchors in Nelson and throughout the West Kootenay boundary. I work with Anchors as a program coordinator and Pure Health navigator and have been with them since just shortly after their OPS opened in November 2018. No, maybe not November, in late 2018. So the primary function of overdose prevention sites and supervised consumption sites is obviously to prevent overdose fatalities. OPS is great at this. There has never been a death at an overdose prevention site to date. This is obviously an essential piece of public health response, but unlike some OPS that are just standalone supervised consumption, our OPS at Anchors in Nelson is situated within a full spectrum of harm reduction services and support. So this continuity of care and connectivity with other service pathways we find is tremendously important, as is the placement of OPS within a harm reduction organization. Our site is open 9:30 to 4:30 Monday through Thursday and staffed by 2 employees, including a site coordinator and a peer worker. In addition to preventing fatal overdose and connecting people who use drugs with supports and services, OPS can benefit the greater community in many ways. Some of the clear advantages include reduced public drug use and improperly disposed supplies. But the more subtle advantages come from that wraparound care that can be provided in OPS. It's a safe, non-judgmental space for people who use drugs and therefore acts as a unique point of care and support and can be really stabilizing for folks who use the space and also the community at large. There are many considerations when implementing overdose prevention services and many layers of stakeholder engagement required for success. It's absolutely imperative that people who use drugs are included throughout planning, service delivery, and evaluation of any services intended to serve us. Anchor strongly believes that OPS should always be situated in a harm reduction service organization. And while there's various models of service delivery, services must always be accessible and meet the needs of people who use drugs to be effective at reducing the harms related to illicit substance use, both in individuals and in communities. I know this is just the beginning of a lot of longer conversations, so please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Anchors as needed for more information or support throughout. Thanks for having us.
And then finally, I'll just have you jump in, Sheila. Not sure if you're on mute.
No, I just unmuted myself. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for having us tonight. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the what we're doing to address the issues of homelessness in the community. We provide safety and security of people and their possessions throughout our with our shelter in the downtown trail area. We're working hard with other organizations, including some of the committees I sit on with the City of Trail, to develop some anti-stigma materials to hand out, because there's so many misconceptions out there in the community about what's happening and what isn't around. We've heard a couple of people here to talk today that are from this community, born and raised, and have family ties here. So we want to kind of develop some anti-stigma materials to ensure that the message gets out. We're looking at short-term. Right now, we have a short-term solution with our La Nina shelter, but we're quickly working with other organizations to identify and recognize what's needed ongoing. We're promoting supportive housing throughout the community and developing that, but that we know is years down the road by the time we find any potential site for it and develop what that might look like and get it up and running. So we're looking at in the meantime, because we're stretched to the limit at the shelter that exists, as well as the individuals that are experiencing homelessness in the community are seeing an uptake in opposition to them even being in the community, and lots of vigilante stuff happening. And we need to really look at how can we recognize the rights of those living in the community that are homeless and still need supports from the community. We're working with health professionals and individuals who have experience and looking at planning what can we do in the meantime until housing is ready. So that's where we're really trying to focus our attention at this time. And I thank the mayor and council, as well as other community agencies, for working together and building a strong team to come up with some strategies around that, for sure.
So just our last slide is just to reiterate what our initial ask was, and to ask mayor and council to work with us in a leadership role in bringing the groups together to try and move some of these agenda items forward. And we really appreciate your time and your concern about this issue that isn't just a trail issue. This is happening all across the province, in every single town, in every city, and across the country as well. And so we'll leave it at that. I guess my question would be, first of all, are there any questions for our group? And then when might we hear from council about our resolution and potentially action steps moving forward in collaboration with us? Thank you.
So maybe I'll just start to say thank you very much for coming today to all of our presenters and all those that are listening in on the phone. I think there's 5 or 6 people listening on the phone. So the resolution will be taken care of at the end of the meeting today. With respect to action items, this is progressive. I believe you are aware, because you've sent us an email, that we had a meeting a couple weeks ago and we're working on some of those action items, and it continues to. I'll just be really honest. I mean, dealing with this issue, not that it is not surprising, but it is definitely in addition to the scope of services that a city of our size deals with. And as a result, there's resourcing issues with the staff that we have. So it's going to be a progressive movement of us to try to pick things off and advocate and move and have those meetings and see if we can get forward progression. So it's something that we're actively dealing with on a daily basis, and we'll just make sure that we keep you informed as we move through the meeting cycle and the engagement cycle of consultation.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're willing to, be a part of this, however that looks, and ask that our expertise as well as our input are part of whatever plans come forward in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Santori, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. First of all, Tammy, what kind of a response, and I'm sure you've dealt with the federal government as well as the provincial government in your efforts to bring an end or make life more a lot easier for those that have been afflicted by drugs, alcohol, etc. I mean, I'm not an expert at this by any means, but one would think that stopping the supply, especially something from like fentanyl, they know where it's coming from. It's coming over illegally or legally with government blinders on in terms of what the use of fentanyl is. What response do you get from the federal government when the question arises in terms of how do we control the flow of fentanyl into our country? Well, across the world, actually. We all know where it's coming from, or most of it anyways. I mean, have you had to deal with it or address that or ask that question of them?
So it's a very complex question, and it involves a multifaceted answer, to be honest. So, we do know that organized crime is involved in this, and organized crime is involved in it across the country. So, on a federal level, there is definitely a role for the RCMP and to look at how do you shut down organized crime in doing this. Now, having said that, we've been trying to do that for a long time and still are not really making much change in that way. Our role, I think, right now is, first of all, to keep people alive so that there is time to figure out the extremely complex nature of this. And so from the federal or from municipalities and chiefs of police all across the country, they are saying, the first thing that we have to do is declare this a federal emergency so that money and resources can be looked at. How do we keep people alive? And then what are some of the other plans that have to happen or things that have to happen in order to stem the flow of drugs getting into our country? This isn't a new issue. It's just changed the flavor. Like we had prohibition with alcohol, back in the early part of the century, same sort of thing. And if you went to a liquor store and you wouldn't know if you were getting, 5% alcohol or, 200% alcohol, and one sip could kill you. That's what's happening right now with fentanyl, right? You have no idea if it's the little bit and you're going to survive, or the next time you use, whether you're going to die from that. So I don't know if that's answered your question, but I think the first step is to really petition the federal government to take this seriously, because it's not a trail issue. It is a country issue.
And if I can make one more comment or ask a question, and this is where it becomes somewhat delicate. And first of all, Lisa, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. On that note, I think most people, the vast majority of people in every community, understand that the vast majority of people with addictions did not choose to do this and said, look, I'm going to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. Something in their life prompted them to do that. And I think people have a significant amount of compassion and patience and caring. But the challenge that I think we have as a council and as a community, and we talk, and you brought up the word rights, and I totally respect your rights, Lisa, and those that have gone through what you have gone through. But where people get torn is that the rights of those who have been addicted are coming at the expense. And I'm not necessarily saying this, I'm sure you've heard this before, that their rights are coming at the expense of other people's rights, where they feel fearful of going to certain areas downtown. Some businesses who have worked and sacrificed their lives now are being hurt because of the lifestyle that they've chosen and where they choose to hang out. And I want to be honest with you, Lisa, I mean, these are things that we as a council hear from people, and we need to be able to respond to them. And yes, there are those that say, put them on a bus and ship them out of here, out of sight, out of mind. I want to reassure you, that's not council's position, never was, and I doubt if it ever will be. But some people feel that a lot of the programs, and I'm sure you've heard this, Tammy, is that rather than finding the cure, that we continue to enable drug addicts and alcoholics by providing the 3 meals, a shelter, safe injection sites. How do we respond to them in terms, like, there are those that say, well, we're not helping them, we're enabling them. I don't necessarily believe that myself, but these are the real questions that are thrown at council members. And it's very difficult to try to provide public safety to those that aren't addicted, but at the same time protecting those that unfortunately fell into this illness. So it's a real challenge for us, and our citizen and our public safety for our citizens is first and foremost. And yes, your life does matter, Lisa, and those that have had the same issues or are undergoing them now, their lives do matter. But I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly, but people don't feel that they should have to give their rights to safety and freedom and the ability to move without fear in their community because someone is not of proper mind when they're under the influence of narcotics and they feel unsafe in their own community. And I know, Sheila, you guys are doing the best that you can. And I've got some compliments from businesses on our alleys that it's been better, a lot better. And hopefully it'll continue that way. So, I mean, I think every agency is doing what they can, but public perception and public anger, as you said, there's some vigilante action taking place, and we don't want to see that for anybody's sake. So I don't know. That's the point I'm making. I'm just being realistic in terms of what we hear, or at least what I hear, and I'm sure other council members do, and I'm sure Sheila hears it on a regular basis. So that's the challenge we have as a council.
Amber, did you
And I would
respond? Yeah.
go ahead, Tammy.
Yeah, if I can respond just really briefly, Sandy, thank you. I understand that this is tremendously challenging and that you have a lot of voices that you have to balance and hear. I do believe that, Sheila named something really important. There is a great, tremendous need for anti-stigma work in Trail. Even in your description of the question, Sandy, there was a lot of language there around choice and lifestyle and my rights versus your rights. We need to, I think, draw this conversation back into the public health landscape. We can't enforce our way out of it. And, until we do some really strong community education, I anticipate that you'll continue hearing things like this. And, my ask is that council do maybe some internal anti-stigma education so that they're prepared to navigate these conversations.
I also think, thank you, Amber, for that eloquent answer. And I also feel that, right now, in the middle of, both dual public health emergencies of COVID, as well as the, poison drug supply pandemic, if I can call it that. I mean, it's the longest running public health emergency in our province since 2016. We need to show people some alternatives on where else can we go besides where we've come from, and bringing it back into that. This is why I wanted to mention, the role of dopamine and the role of inclusion in community. That is the way out of this. We cannot enforce our way out of this. There is a role absolutely for enforcement. It's directed at the wrong folks right now. What people are trying to do on the streets are survive. They're trying to not die today. And so that's the level of angst that people are living under, and because they have nowhere else to go. And that's what we're saying. We need to work together as a whole entire community that involves city council, involves the health authority, involves the service groups, involves the RCMP, in building an alternative to what we have. Otherwise, we'll continue to deal with this on an ongoing basis. And it is going to take time, but there is urgency there because people are dying, and we're trying to, build something that needed to happen, yesterday. So, I don't think there's a quick or short answer to this other than, we need to do something different than what has been happening.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Amber. And thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your response.
Lisa Kabeloff, did you have your hand up for a question? I see a yellow hand. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I totally understand what you mean, that you have lots of voices, that you have to balance all of that. But these people have nowhere to go. There's no homes for them. There's no place that they could say, well, I'll just go and live over there. There's nowhere. And so, to say, well, the people that are paying the property taxes, they're the ones that matter the most, is very hurtful to them. And I think what we're trying to teach in our group is, is coming to the table to have a conversation and to communicate. And, like that we're a community of many different people in many different situations, and that we have to learn to live together. I know that this is not easy with some of the people that are in the downtown area, but I can assure you that if they felt like they were actually being heard and their opinions, their feelings mattered, they wouldn't be so wanting to be acting like a 3-year-old. Like, when you sometimes treat somebody like a 3-year-old, well, then they act like that. And I think we are better than that. I know we are. And I know that Trail is a better community than that. I mean, I love a lot of the people here. And I've always thought that this is like one of the bestest places to live. I wish I would have actually literally grown up here, but I've got to come back here now. And yeah, so I understand, but I just think we should try. And I don't know if there's some way to, offer anti-stigma, and maybe there's some other things that we as in our group can help try to make the downtown core businesses feel a little more like they matter as well. Like, we're willing to do whatever it takes to feel that our voices are heard and that your guys' voices are heard. We don't want to be babied, and we don't want to be felt pity for, but we do want to have felt understanding that it's not easy when you have nowhere to go. It's not a question of, when there's nowhere to live, that's it. There's nothing more to do, and except for cause trouble. So
yeah, thank you.
I'm just going to close my comments by saying, Lisa, that's probably the best explanation that we've heard from anybody in terms of how we try to deal and settle this. So again, thanks very much.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think there's a realization too that providing housing alternatives and the stabilization of the vulnerable population through housing alternatives is really key to this. And I think, I can speak for the rest of council to say that you have our commitment that we are actively endorsing and working with BC Housing to try to find alternatives for housing, and not only alternatives, options for housing for our vulnerable populations in our area. And I think Sheila can attest to that as well. Does anyone have any other questions for our panelists before we move on to our next delegation? No?
I just have a quick
one comment though, and I without wanting this to sound stigmatizing as well, because we have an image in our mind of what substance users look like. And my 80-year-old mother does not come to mind. 60% of the people who are dying of overdoses right now are in the trades. And I can say from the work that I do professionally in providing alternatives to opioids, the vast majority of people that I see are not the people that are downtown. In fact, the people that I see downtown, and again, this is where I don't want to stigmatize the folks that are downtown, but they account for, you know, less than 10% of the overall people that I see, less than 10%. And so what that means is that substance use and using substances, the stigma and shame that comes along with that, it makes it such a hidden problem. And so I can guarantee you almost every single person here has a neighbor, a friend, a family who is hiding this or knows of someone who's hiding their substance use. And so it is way bigger than just what our issues are of what you're dealing with on the downtown area. So, and I apologize again, not wanting to stigmatize the folks that are at the very, you know, without those homes, at the very lowest of what you could possibly get as a human being.
Thanks, Tammy, for that. Sheila, did you have any closing words or?
No, I was just going to go back to what Robert had said about the businesses and whatnot. We have had lots of conversation with the individuals that are waiting outside for services at the shelter. And it's unfortunate that we have to restrict the amount of people in there, but that's a COVID thing and space thing and whatnot. They're aware that their actions have impact on others in the back alley, and they are actively really stepping up and cleaning up and trying to be good neighbors for sure. And it's very noticeable, and I commend them every day on there, because they're peers getting together, helping peers and making sure to that everybody's safe. You know, basically they're just trying to meet their very basic needs. They want food, they want shelter, they want a sense of belonging, they want people to care. And I think that having conversations as a council with friends, family, you know, we had a staff member the other day that said they were walking down the street and somebody came up to them and started talking about those people, that we're bringing them all into town, and just giving them information and breaking the stigma and giving them real-time information. These people are from here. They're citizens of the community and need our help as much as anybody else. So, but they are coming forward and really helping out for sure.
Thanks, Sheila, and thank you for to your team for all their work too, and all your partnership. We appreciate that. Okay, thank you to Mom Stop the Harm Group, and we appreciate your time today, and we will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, and that is Lori Carr. If you want to start your video, there you go. Hi, Lori, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me this evening. We're going to switch focus here on topics that was so fascinating for me to listen to. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see that? They can see the big green front slide?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Lori Carr. I'm the development coordinator with the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, and I'm going to be giving a little brief update on the state of invasive species in our region, particularly trail. So the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society is a nonprofit. We were started in 2005 with a mission to protect our ecosystems and communities by preventing and reducing the harmful impacts of invasive species. In the event that you are unfamiliar with invasive species, I'll just briefly go through them. An invasive species is an organism that causes ecological or economic harm, and it is not native, it's outside of its natural range. And there are three common traits that you can look at invasive species through to understand how they are different from other plants or other animals. So the first trait is that they are human dispersed primarily and initially. And so we have a lot of educational programs that focus on human activity like Clean, Drain, Dry. You probably have seen the billboards, Play, Clean, Go, Don't Move Firewood. These are all behavior change programs. The second trait about invasive species, start my timer, is exponential growth. And this is probably a very familiar curve at this point when we're talking about the pandemic, because virus has exponential growth in invasive species. which a virus is, COVID anyways, is also experienced exponential growth. And so what you have is very high fecundity and a lack of predator control for these non-native species. And that's why they are able to grow so explosively. The third trait is that they cause harm that I mentioned. They cause harm to the environment, the economy, or health. Some plants are poisonous. Some animals will crash the fisheries. They affect recreation, tourism, our way of life, and very importantly, biodiversity. They are one of the major threats to biodiversity globally. So they are insidious, and you might not recognize them right off the bat, but they do cause a huge problem on many levels. We have 97 known invasive species in our region. Most of them are terrestrial and riparian plants. We have some fish, and we have the one vertebrate, which is the American bullfrog, who's not in the trail region, but mostly around Creston.
I don't see the zebra.
Zebra quagga mussels.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the, yeah. We have a big monitoring program for that in the region and province, and we don't have zebra quagga mussels in BC. Cross your fingers. We hope to never get them. But you've seen the inspection stations, I'm sure, along the highways. And that actually started in our region through the Columbia Basin Trust, through some funding and politicking. This is where the inspection program started, was actually here. So we can be proud of that. That has moved to a provincial level of effort. So when we look at trail, we've never done a survey of trail. We did just complete one of Warfield, which is what all those pink dots are. And that's what it looks like when you've had an inventory. And as you can see in the trail region, they're sporadic. So these are just people reporting it in, and we've done some surveys for Ministry of Transportation mainly. So some of this terrestrial species that are in trail are knotweed, Horiolisum, Scotch broom, bright yellow flowers, you probably recognize those. Blueweed, knapweed, I'm sure you've seen knapweed everywhere. Dalmatian toadflax is yellow, and Himalayan balsam, which grows in wet areas. So let's dive into this just a little bit more with knotweed. People think of this as false bamboo. They get confused with that one, but it's giant. It grows very prolifically. There's some massive patches around. It's a problem because of its extensive rhizome structure. And because of the rhizomes, it's very hard to kill, and also it spreads extensively, and it causes damage to infrastructure like asphalt, pavement, foundations. So this is a problem for economics, but it's also a problem for our riparian habitat, because it loves to be in that wet zone next to water, which also happens to be very sensitive wildlife habitat. So this is one of our most high priority species, and it shows up in urban areas quite frequently. So in the trail region, there's a huge patches along Casino Road, and it is being treated by Teck and Modi, but there's also some in the City of Trail that's not being treated, as well as there is some knotweed in the municipal parks. And our concern is that it is or has been mowed by staff, and that can spread knotweed because it can reproduce from plant fragments. So operations training is one of the key things to preventing this species. So if we look at all of the species that I mentioned, I know this is very quick and there's a lot of information to kind of grasp in this presentation, but this is, again, the same curve, and you're going to see this curve again. It's just a really important curve because this is how the species grow, and this is how we manage the species and determine species priorities as well on our priority list. So prevent, that's always where we want to be. That comes to education, that comes to bylaws, policies, procedures, operations. That is in the prevention category. Eradication is when we have the initial appearance of a plant or animal and you want to get rid of it immediately. So we have 2 of those species in there, Dalmatian toadflax and blueweed, where it's at the point where we could actually eradicate those species before they become widespread, like knotweed or North Africa grass. Unfortunately, just went from eradicate to contain, so that means it's spreading. Scotch broom and Horalism are also in the contained category. And then there's like a ton in the strategic control. There's only 3 listed there for trail, but there's a lot more species. They're just not in a great amount that we have on our map. Doesn't mean that they're not there. So knotweed, as we can see, it's in the contained, but we can't get rid of all of it. It needs to be herbicide treated. We can't currently treat within 1 meter of the water, so we can't eradicate knotweed, although we would love to. But it is a contained species. So what can local governments do, which is why I'm here, is to go over some of the options for council. And again, we can divide it into 3 main issues: enforcement, education and programming, and collaboration. So when it comes to enforcement, there's 2 ways basically of going ahead to enact enforcement, and that is assigning an enforcement officer for the Weed Control Act, which is federal. Unfortunately, it doesn't have all the species on it, so it's not the best way, but it can be an easy way because that legislation already exists. The second is through municipal bylaws. You can have a specific noxious weed or invasive species bylaw, or you can roll it into other existing bylaws like landscaping or property or nuisance bylaws. It's also important to make sure it's in all the bylaws that are applicable, like subdivision and development and your official community plan, pesticide regulations. It does impact a lot of activities that occur within an urban area. Unfortunately, we just haven't been super aware of how much invasive species are actually implicated in a lot of the activities that we do. So if you want to think of a model bylaw, Squamish just passed an invasive species management bylaw, and they prohibit sowing, planting, cultivating, releasing, or allowing accumulation or spread of invasives. They also prohibit the sale of invasive plants and animals, which is key because there is no federal legislation for that, and treatment and disposal that do not conform with best management practices as described in bylaw. They also have a disposal procedure document to go with the bylaw. So this is an excellent example. It just came out in February. Education and programming. This can run the gamut of signage that we do a lot of media, social media. We have a big education department. But when it comes down to local governments, they have tax-funded programs for private property, which we have no jurisdiction over. So this is really important. This has been a giant gap in our region because we deal mostly with Crown lands in terms of funding and control. So we have neighborhood programs that loan out equipment, that do planning with private property owners. They have cost share programs. Roslyn has a 50% cost share up to $400 for knotweed. And the Kootenay Boundary has various programs, also cost sharing model for a bunch of species that are mostly agricultural, but it includes any species that is out there. So there are some examples in our region. The East Kootenays, the Regional District of East Kootenays has an amazing program. So they do work and they are out there, and we would like to see them throughout our entire region. So these are just a couple of examples. We did a rack, like a door hanger rack card for the city of Castlegar last year for their bylaw enforcement officer. In Nelson, we have been organizing treatment for their knotweed, and this is an example of public signage, which has been very well. Sorry, I'm getting close to the end of my presentation. That's what that means. In terms of, sorry, I went backwards. In terms of collaboration, there in the Violin Lake restoration, we are providing a stronger part of the Stronger BC funding crew to do invasive species management. But we're really lucky that funding, well, lucky, I mean, it's COVID related, to have that funding come up because invasive species were not put into the initial budget and planning. So this is just an example of how important it is to include invasive species from the get-go in all your operations and planning. There's opportunities to collaborate with the Kootenay Boundary. They have a good environmental service manager there that you can work with. We also have the Eco Garden project, which is aiming to help private property owners and municipalities make the right choices for their landscaping and for fire smart mitigation landscaping, and we hope to develop that further. We just, if you collaborate with us, we just did a Village of Warfield inventory, management plan, strategic plan, and we are in the process of completing one for the Regional District of Central Kootenay. In the handout I gave you is this great little sheet. If you want further information, it's just a really great, some great points in there if you want to go through them, just to see where you're at and where you can go. So I do suggest you start there. Definitely get in contact with us, of course. We love to collaborate. That's the name of the game with invasive species. It's incredibly important that we all collaborate. It's the only way that we are going to make any headway. And my take-home message is prevention is cheapest. So once again, it's the same curve where the costs go up as the curve progresses. Of course, once they become out of control, we can't manage invasive species anymore, and it just becomes super expensive, which is what we're finding now with knotweed. So we really want to work on the prevention end, and that would be the collaboration, procedures, policies, education, programming part of it. And thank you everyone for listening to my packed presentation. If you have any questions, please, I would love to hear them, but also you can send me an email later on because often people come up with questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Lori from council?
No, thank you. It was great.
Great.
Oh.
Very informative.
Thank you. So Lori, do you have a specific ask for us other than just for us to take a look at that question list and see if we would want to move forward with any initiatives? Like, I'm just wondering, what would a first step be?
Well, what we have done previously is met with the staff and gone through those questions and looked at what can be done. And then it's never comes, well, the city of Nelson, we did meet with one of the counselors, but if this is something, I mean, I know your staff is interested in this program and you're actually legally required under the Weed Control Act to control the species listed under that act, and knotweed is one of them. So from that perspective, you are legally bound to do that. So usually councils do want to fulfill their legal obligations once they realize that they have one. But then what we've done is gone through those questions with staff and then come up with a program, and then basically it becomes part of operations. How you decide you want to do the budgeting, it can come out of, it can be a line item on an operations budget, or like Nelson has made it a line item as part of their budget. And then Warfield, they got a grant through the CBT to do their inventory. So there's kind of different ways to go about it. And then you can be part of the Kootenay Boundaries service area if you want to be part of their tax collection and legislation, which they don't have any bylaws, but they might be looking into bylaws, and I think they want to do a much more collaborative model than they've done before. So there are these different options on how you want to do it, but I've never had a specific ask. It's more your staff is interested. And so there is the willingness, which is key, because it really comes down to staff rolling out these programs and making sure that they're in their operations. So you are poised in that sense.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks very much. Any other questions of Lori from council?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. Have a nice
Thanks.
evening.
Okay, you too. I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Ms. McIsaac, do we have any questions that have come in through public question period?
No, we do not.
Okay, we'll move on to number 4 then. 4.1 is unsightly premises, 1425 Tamarack Avenue. And if you want to provide us an introduction, Ms. McIsaac.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Council has reporting before you with respect to the condition of the property at 1425 Tamarack Avenue. The city's unsightly premises bylaw does require that property owners maintain their properties to certain standards. And at 1425 Tamarack Avenue, it is found to fail to meet that standard. And the property owner has been requested to remove the accumulation of discarded construction materials and other debris from the property, but hasn't done so by the requested date. It is being recommended that council issue an order under the unsightly premises bylaw requiring the property owner to remove the accumulation of discarded materials and debris within 30 days of receipt of notice. And failing that, the city would then be positioned to enter onto the property, do the removal by contractor, and then charge those expenses through to the property owner as taxes in arrears if that invoice is unpaid at year end. So that is the recommendation that's being advanced for council's consideration tonight.
Okay, Councillor Kashoni, you are on mute. Were you moving that recommendation? Yeah. You're going to take yourself off mute so we can hear you for the rest of the meeting.
There we go. Yes, I'm moving that.
And do I have someone to second that recommendation? Councillor Butler, thank you. Any questions or comments on this one?
When do we go to the 15 days?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we give them 30, then we give them 30, and then, I mean.
Then we give them 15.
then
So
we
when
give them
the
15.
just to clarify the timelines, when the bylaw enforcement officer's notice letter is sent, they do give 2 weeks of time, so 14 days. When it's advanced to council, our bylaw indicates that in normal circumstances, 30 days is given. Council has reduced that to 15 days. Typically, that is done if the matter is considered to be quite urgent, if there's very dry, unwieldy vegetation on the property, or if it is a property that we deal with routinely once or more in a year, where we're having frequent need to visit a property, it will be reduced. It is at council's discretion. In this case, there's not a huge accumulation of materials there needing action. And this isn't a property that we have advanced to council previously. So it was thinking that 30 days would be appropriate.
So after 30, we'll send in a contractor, or do they get another 15 after that?
No, after 30, we would be positioned to move in with a contractor.
Mm.
Okay. Question on the motion.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. So the next item is a proclamation request. And the proclamation request is that council proclaim May 10th, 2021 as the Day of Action Against Anti-Asian Racism in the City of Trail. And this was submitted by a Burnaby resident. And the Stand with Asians Coalition. Do I have someone to move that?
So moved.
Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, do I have someone to second that proclamation?
Mhm.
Is that a yes, Councillor Kashoni?
No, it wasn't me. No, I was looking
Okay.
down at the thing.
Councillor Butler, okay. Councillor Butler seconded. Is there any comments on this?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. The next item is under bylaws 5.1 zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2905 2021. And Ms. McIsaac, did you want to introduce this?
I will. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number 2905 is a zoning bylaw amendment bylaw. We had a public hearing just prior to the regular council meeting, dealing with the rezoning of a property on Highway 3B from single-family residential R1 to single-family residential zone R1S to allow a secondary suite to also be constructed within the principal dwelling that will be constructed on the property. We didn't have any representations at the public hearing. It is being recommended that council proceed with third reading of the bylaw at tonight's meeting. We will then have to await the approval of the Ministry of Transportation before bringing the bylaw back to you for adoption.
Okay, so the recommendation before you is for the bylaw number 2905, 2021 to receive its third reading. Do I have someone to make that motion?
So move.
Councillor Santori, second by Councillor Kashoni. Any comments or questions on this matter?
No.
No.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. Now we're on to Councillor Committee reports. Councillor Kashoni, you're first.
Thank you. At the last board meeting, the project at Grand Forks Landfill was awarded to Marwest Industries at the value of $1,861,302. Further authorization was given to spend up to 10% of the contract value, or $186,130 in contingency to manage unforeseen costs during construction. The reason there is, I explained it earlier, I think in the GOC, that seemingly all these costs have gone up considerably, even maybe more than 10%. So we figured we'd put about $186,000 in just to try to manage it. Further, overall cost of the project is expected to be higher. It's at $3,564,000, and this is due to expanded scope of the project with 5 windrows instead of 4, but mostly to increase costs for equipment and supplies. I think Councillor Santori commented on the building of a house, and it seems that it's more than just the lumber, that it's also a number of other things that have gone up 15, 20, 30%. I could hardly believe it when I looked at it. A reminder is that we already received over $2 million in grants for the project. We're now awaiting grants for the McKelvey Creek project. These grants, however, are at the 90% level. And with the projected cost of around $2 million, the regional district will only have to come up with $200,000 for the complete project. And that would be for the complete organic diversion project. If we get the grant, and it seems likely that we will get the grant, it's only going to cost us about $200,000. The Bailey Theatre received 2 grants of $32,000 each for a total of $64,000 to upgrade the staging equipment. The regional district, on top of that, is guaranteed $150,000 for stage upgrades if and when the grant applied for by the Arts Council comes through. And we still haven't heard about this grant from the Arts Council, but we're committed to the $150,000, and it's money well spent. The final budget numbers are through, and now we know that that's a tax requisition for the regional district will be $4,659,378 total. This money provides services to our citizens, and I'm going to take a moment to list them. First, planning and development is $44,000, victims assistance at $32,000, solid waste and landfill at $315,000, emergency services at $70,000, 911 that many people think is free at $77,000, culture, arts, and recreation at $296,000, fire protection for the East End $1,525,000, cemetery $241,000, transit $464,000, building inspection $258,000, animal control $54,000, and our East End regional sewer at $1,149,716. And now added to this is the cost of administration for general government, which is $123,000. Now, what it's important to understand is this is what the city of Trail pays. This is not the total cost. So when we say, for example, the fire service, for example, is taking a look at, $1,525,000, that only represents about 40% of the total cost. So if you were going to look at the actual budget numbers, it would be about 3 times as high as this.
Being your Android.
Yeah. As you can readily see, the City of Trail supports the regional district in a great many areas and provides services to its citizens through the regional district. I often get questioned as to what the regional district provides for the citizens of Trail, and that's one of the major reasons why I've taken the time to list the services that the regional district provides and that we pay into. The last major issue is that the terms of reference of the East End Committee are being looked at. We've been notified that discussions of budgets not included in the East End and disposal of dam revenues are not in our terms of reference, which was quite astonishing to me. We're looking at upgrading the terms of reference so that we can provide recommendations to the board on these two issues. And that's a major concern, that the terms of reference of this particular committee doesn't include items that dramatically impact the East End services. So we'll be looking at that coming up the meeting here in May, and then we'll be looking at it at the board meeting. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Any questions for Councillor Kashoni? Seeing none, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, you are next, please.
Okay, I'll give you just a little recap of the trail pageant that took place on May 7th. First of all, I'd like to thank all the girls for being in the program. They did a fantastic job. For those of you that were watching it, it was something that to see. They really did a wonderful job. And I'd just like to acknowledge who they were. Trinity Gattamans, she was Miss Colombo Lodge. Maria Poomer, she was Italian Canadies. Gracie Bobbitt, Miss Legion. Grace Warsh, Miss Trail Firefighters. Jasmine Smith, Miss Knights of Pythias. Madeline Clark, Miss Shoppers Drug Mart. And Raquel Collins, Miss Kiwanis. And the following are some of the awards that were given out. The Blossom Award was won by Madeline Clark. The Dedication Award was won by Raquel Collins. The Perseverance Award was won by all of them for being in the program for 18 months. So that was wonderful. The Friendship Award was Maria Poomer. The Community Knowledge Award was split between Jasmine Smith and Raquel Collins. And the Community Presentation Award was won by Jasmine Smith. The Speech Award was won by Jasmine Smith. The Talent Award was won by Raquel Collins. And lastly, the new Miss Trail is Jacqueline Smith, and the Trail Princess for 2021 is Gracie Bobbitt. So lastly, I'd like to say thank you to Cassidy and Lauren for a job well done. For being on the computer, I like I say, and visual, it was a really spectacular night. And those are my reports, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Dobie or Councillor Gattafoni Robinson? Sorry. None? Thank you for that report, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson. I watched it as well as many other councillors on Friday night, and it really was so very well done. Yeah, and including what I really loved seeing was our old Miss Trail candidates and queens coming back and participating. And there was Afton and Addison who did the emceeing, which was really, it was really well done. So thanks for your report and congratulations to our new ambassadors. Councillor Santori, you are on up next.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Payson. I'll report out on the GOC that was held earlier today. We had two delegations. Firstly, was Don Catalano and Ashley Ruggiero from Grant Thornton, and they reported out on the city's 2020 audited financial statements. And it was encouraging to get the report back stating that the city continues to be in good financial position and without any concerns that had to be brought to council's attention. Our second presentation was from three representatives from BC Housing who gave council an overview of what BC Housing goals and objectives are and what they provide to communities. They spoke about the difference between shelters, supportive housing, group homes for seniors, handicapped, etc., and also reaffirmed their continued effort to provide supportive housing as well as other housing possibilities within our community. We also received a detailed report today from Tricia Davidson on Parks and Recreation. She gave us an overview of the continued challenges that COVID presents to Parks and Rec. However, having said that, I think Parks and Recs have done an excellent job and put in a great effort in ensuring that we could maximize the number of participants to our facilities while at the same time maintaining COVID protocol and ensuring that public safety is first and foremost. Secondly, Butler Park is almost complete now, and baseball will proceed in the infield until the outfield is completed, but we're nearing completion. The pickleball court upgrade, well, not upgrade, but the new pickleball courts are in progress. And obviously, given the hours that they've been putting in and working 7 days a week, hopefully the pickleball players will be back in action quite soon. And also the Trail Memorial Center upgrades are absolutely fascinating in terms of what they've done and are continue to do in the old library premises, as well as viewing from the McIntyre room into the kids rink. It's almost like turning back the clock about 40 years back to where it was at that time. I would love to invite the public to go and have a look, but unfortunately due to COVID, we're all going to have to wait before we get to enjoy it. But I think parents are really going to enjoy it, and user groups are going to look forward to using those facilities in the future. Also, Public Works, earlier today, Council approved the purchase of a Vector 2100 combination sewer and cleaning truck. The successful bidder was Weimar Equipment, and that comes to a total of $377,000, excluding taxes. Finally, Council did approve the statements and the schedules that were contained or included in the City of Trail Statement of Financial Information for the year ended December 31st, 2020. And that, Mayor Payson, concludes my reports for this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Santori? Seeing none, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. I just a couple of items to report tonight. I also attended the Trail Ambassador Program pageant on Friday, and I just want to say I agree with what everyone else has said. It was very, very for a virtual program, it was actually very exciting. I mean, it was almost better than being in the room with them, because you actually got such a good vision of everybody, you know, the whole time. And just to hear the parents come on and wish their, you know, daughters good luck. And it was just really, really quite exciting right up until the very end, because you didn't have a clue who was going to win it. And I had the opportunity to talk to the princess and Miss Trail at the incredible market on Saturday, and it was great to see them. They thought it went very well too. So on Saturday, I would like to add to that, I did volunteer at the Incredible Market to help with making sure that people were following the COVID protocol. And so many people just were enjoying the day. The weather was really good in the morning, and up until it was open from 10 to 2 on Saturday. And the weather was really good, and they had people just going in one entrance and out the next. So it was a steady, safe stream of people, and you know, sanitizing and following the COVID protocols. And I believe there was 40 vendors, all different kinds of foods and plants for sale. It was very, very successful. I'm looking forward to the next one in a couple of weeks on May 22nd. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Jones? Seeing none, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to echo Councillor Gadafoni Robinson's sentiment of the pageant. Myself and my family attended virtually, and we really enjoyed it. It was well done, and I'd like to sort of extend my congratulations to the organizers and to all of the contestants. That's the end of my report. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Doby.
Mayor Payson, I wasn't lucky enough to see the full pageant. I just got started and I got cut off and was not able to get back in. However, I too volunteered at the Saturday morning market, and we had the Queen and the Princess there, and I believe 3 others of the ambassadors. And I don't know how they managed it in their gowns. I mean, the weather was nice, but every once in a while we were getting a pretty cool breeze. I did get a chance to talk to Miss Princess, Grace Bobbitt, and she still said, "I'm so excited, I don't think I realize yet what's happened to me." And we had the Queen there as well, but she was a pretty popular item and I didn't get a chance to converse with her. I would just like to give some information on how well the market was attended. During that 4-hour period, we had 1,700 people go through the market, which is an incredible amount. I think part of the attraction was the fact that we did have 40+ vendors, and it was also a Mother's Day market. We sold teacups for $10 a teacup, and they had plants in them, so they made a great Mother's Day gift. And we sold all of them to the tune of raising $350, which has gone right into the Incredible Market Fund. There's a lot of small items that we need to purchase, so that money will be spent well, and it will be spent very quickly. I want to say thank you to all the volunteers that came out and helped. We had, as Councillor Jones indicated, we did have the exit. We had 3 entrance ways, and all 3 were where people were being checked for the appropriate protocol in terms of masking up, and we were sanitizing. We also want to say a special thank you to Safety Net for supporting us with all the traffic control equipment that they brought. And see, I thought there was one more item here. Nope, I think that was it. That concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Dobie? Seeing none, I'll do my reports now. So first, I want to thank Eileen Peterson and Betty Ann Lawson. They got in touch with me and they provided me with a personal rock wall tour of Gyro Park, including the bleachers. Eileen, Betty, and many others have spent hours cleaning the bleachers, and also they have been supported by the city's Public Works Department in removing the debris. It was really lovely and informative. And again, I really thank them for all their love of the rock walls and their work on that. I had no idea that the bleachers were there until I started seeing them publicized through Facebook and in the Trail Times this year. And I really encourage everyone to go down and see how nice that looks, and just amazing workmanship of what our forefathers, where the stonemasons did years ago. It's really quite phenomenal. I also had a Highway 3 mayor's meeting. So this goes basically from Princeton all the way to the Alberta border. We meet several times a year, and it's a meeting to discuss priority projects along Highway 3 and Highway 3B, and we integrate with Ministry of Transportation on these matters. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our local projects of priority. So when we're looking at large scale projects, the northbound passing lane near the Brilliant Dam between Highway 3A, between Castlegar and Nelson, is on the list. And then when we talk about local smaller projects, Highway 3B, approximately 13 kilometers of mill and fill paving from Beaver Creek Bridge in Fruitvale, easterly to the junction of Highway 3. Highway 22A, approximately 11 kilometers of overlay paving from the Canadian Customs building to the junction of Highway 3B in Juanita. Highway 3B near the RDKB building in the downtown. There's about 250 meters of mill and fill of the center line inside lane approaching Highway 3B and 22 intersection. And there's numerous other side roads, with the ones closer to the trail being all of Columbia Gardens Road and Casino Road. Last week, there was also filling of potholes and resurfacing between the Mohawk building, the Husky, and the RCMP building one day last week. So that kind of tells you what is going to be happening with milling and filling and paving this summer. So I know bike traffic is high and sometimes motorbike, and so just please be prepared for the construction and the road filling and repaving that is going to be happening in our area. And I just want to thank our local and regional mayors who call that meeting so we can advocate collectively. You know, the ministry really appreciates that we come together with common voice. My third item is just to say that the air quality working group has been postponed until June. IH, I have a weekly IH meeting discussing COVID. And again, much of the information comes out on the news during the week and on the weekends. And the main messaging this week is they are just encouraging everyone to register for their vaccination appointments. We really want to see vaccination numbers climb because with every person vaccinated, we're getting closer to community immunity. Those 18 plus can register now for the provincial Get Vaccinated website program. And then the registration allows you to get notified to book when you are ready to have your vaccine appointment. The registration portion is really important because it also allows the provincial health authority to accurately estimate the demand, so the number of vaccines that are going to be required in each community. And there are several ways you can register. Go online to the provincial website. It's www.getvaccinated.gov.bc.ca. You can call by phone 1-833-838-2323. And those who wish to register in person can go to our local Service BC office, and that is at 1520 Bay Avenue and Trail. That is Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., but they are closed for lunch from 12:30 to 1. So there's several ways that you can register for the provincial vaccination registry and clinic. And then I also had a provincial mayor's call with Minister Osborne and again, with Minister Farnsworth to discuss the COVID travel restrictions that are in the place with the health or the province being divided up into 3 different health authorities. And the other part they talked about with it is they just wanted to get a sense of broadband availability in individual communities and the need for expansion if communities were happy with their broadband. And so those are the programs and meetings that I attended this week. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Dobie, go ahead.
I have one, Mayor Payson.
Okay, hang on, I'll just go Councillor Dobie first.
Okay.
Mayor Payson, I just wondered the information that you provided in terms of the website and the phone number for vaccination. Have we put that on our website?
I have forwarded it to our CAO to ask Andrea, our communications coordinator, to put it up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Councillor Santori, you were next, and then Councillor Garofoni Robinson.
Thanks, Mayor Payson. I'm not sure if it's something we would raise with the Mayor's Highway Committee or if it's something we could do locally, but I got a call last week from an individual who had a near head-on collision. And this isn't the first time I've heard this, but you know, when you go past the Mohawk towards going east towards Juanita, where the 2 lanes merge into one, the merged lane is right on the corner. So anybody that's on the passing lane towards the mall after the Mohawk, if they decide to pass at the last minute, they're pretty much head on with the traffic coming west towards Trail. I'm not sure if any other councillors have had any concerns expressed to them on that one, but I told the individual that I would pass it on to council. Maybe we could ask staff to highways just to look into it.
I can send an email to Hugh Everly too. I'll interface with staff on that, and I can send an email on.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And Councillor Garofoni Robinson, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's regarding the registry, what Councillor Dobie was talking about too. Is that also for your second shot?
No, so once you're registered for your first shot and you've had your first shot, you're already in the provincial registry. So then when you're ready for your second shot, you are either going to get an email or a text message telling you when you can book for your second shot. So that's why it's important to register and get in the system and get your first vaccination shot, because it automatically prompts you for your second.
Oh, okay, thank
What
you.
they're saying on the news now is that initially they were indicating that it was going to be probably a 4-month window between first and second shots. And because we're getting quite a bit of Pfizer being in Canada-wide, that they're expecting there to be a compression between the first and second shots where it's going to be under 4 months now. So
Okay.
hopefully let's keep our fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? None? Okay, great. So next we have the consent agenda. There's 2 items on here. There's Mum Stop the Harm opioid crisis resolution request, and there's a request for council to pass 2 resolutions. And then there is Town of View Royale authority and training for hospital security staff. And there is a note for us to consider this because it does impact the resources that the RCMP are putting forward, dealing with potential, I don't know if I should say arrest, but transfer of patients in need, and then monitoring them in emergency departments. So I'll open up the consent agenda to council if there's anything that you want to pull out as a collective group.
Oh.
Councillor Jones?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but is item 7.3 and 7.4, are they in the consent agenda?
They are, and I forgot to flip the page, so
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, so
That's okay.
7.3 and 7.4. So you can pull those out if you want to discuss them as well.
Okay, I wanted to just point out 7.3, the Trail and District Public Library Quarterly Report. We're just trying a new format, and if you could get some feedback on this, that would be greatly appreciated. If you look at the first page, you know, when you can see the numbers and the 2 separate numbers there, visits, in-person visits, and the amount of days open. It's just, we felt it would be clearer and easier for people to read the report. And then it goes on to just go into a little bit more detail of the report. So if we could get some feedback on that from other council members, that would be good. I also wanted to make a motion to support item number 7.1.
Okay, so if we can just backtrack to 7.3, Councillor Jones.
Sure.
Do you want us to give you verbal feedback now, or would you like us to send that to you in email? I mean, for me personally, I think the report looks great. It's so modern and fresh looking, and very easy to read and very understandable. But Samantha's been doing a really nice job of her reports through her tenure as executive director, or library director. So how would you like that to be received by council?
You know what, if you want to just send me a quick email, that would be great. And then I can just bring it back to the board.
Okay, so if everyone can send any feedback that you have to Councillor Jones by the end of the week, so she can compile that and send that along, and you have officially my feedback. So thanks for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's great. And we're back to 7.1, Mum Stop the Harm. So there was 2 resolutions in this packet. The first one is, be it resolved that the Government of Canada declare the overdose crisis a national public health emergency, so that is taken seriously and funded appropriately. The second is, be it also resolved that the Government of Canada immediately seek input from the people most affected by this crisis and meet with provinces and territories to develop a comprehensive Pan-Canadian Overdose Action Plan, which includes comprehensive supports and full consideration of reforms that other countries have used to significantly reduce drug-related fatalities and stigma, such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply of pharmaceutical alternatives to toxic street drugs, and decriminalization for personal use. So those are the 2 resolutions. Is that what you are wanting to put forward as a motion?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Kashoni, you have your finger up and you're on mute.
I'll second Colin's.
Okay, Councillor Santori, because I'm not quite sure. Did you want to speak to that, Robert?
No, I was going to second it.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert.
But that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's wise to do, because I really think that, as Sandy was talking about earlier, that you've got a situation where really we can do as much as we can locally, but it's generally a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so with respect to the motions, the resolution requests, I would need a motion for that. So Councillor Dobie, sorry, did you have something to say on that?
I just wanted to talk about the town of View Royal. I think we.
Okay, hang on. I think we need to finish this one off first. So we're on 7.1. Does anyone have any questions on the resolution
No.
or comments? No. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Dobie, over to you, the town of View Royal.
Yes, I'd just like to put a motion on the floor in support of David Paragudoff's comments, and that we send an information statement to IH. Or an
Second.
information letter in support of this, of them looking into this.
Second, Robert.
Okay.
Mayor Payson, if I could interject.
Absolutely.
I think the letter you'd want to be writing would be to the province to provide the authority through, so the town of View Royal has provided an indication that it was writing through to the premier to provide that support rather than Interior Health. So if council is agreeable with that, I think that your letter would be written to the premier.
Mhm.
Councillor Kashoni, do you have a question?
No, I was going to make a statement. I know that that's happening quite often because I was talking to somebody who was working in emergency in Kelowna, where they have a lot of crime. And sometimes those police officers spend almost the entire night there, because sometimes they have to wait 5 or 6 hours for that person to get, triaged. And so that you're looking at, say, 5 or 6 hours of a policeman's time, and it just really is just a waste of time and money to have somebody else do it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think that Sergeant Wasenowicz has also spoken to us about that it's a daily occurrence and sometimes multiple times a day that our local RCMP are bringing vulnerable populations in need up to the emergency department and having to basically do security with them and supervision. So, okay, so Ms. Mkaisa, do we have that motion moved by Councillor Dobie and seconded by
Councillor Kashoni.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this?
Nope.
Councillor Dobie, you had a question?
Yes, I would just like to amend that motion. Even though we're sending the letter to ministry, could we not send a copy to IH just so that they're aware of what we're looking at?
Sure.
No
And it
problem.
wouldn't be necessary to amend your motion. That's so noted, and we would include that in the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions on that one?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If any? Carried, thank you. And then the last motion would be that the items on the consent agenda be received for information, which is the remaining items, or all four. Ms. McIsaac, is it all four or just the one that isn't pulled out?
No, it'd be a receipt of
All
all.
four? Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Santori, do I have someone to second that? Councillor Jones, thank you. Any other questions on these matters? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. Any new business? Seeing none. Department reports. We have two department.
I have one, Mayor Payson. I
Sure.
have one.
Sure, go ahead. Are we
Eleanor.
talking about new business?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I sent that email regarding the letter that was in the paper regarding the issues that we have with the homeless and the group that wrote the letter, and I was wondering if we should respond to it. I'm asking the
So-
question.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that this letter was written by, signed by 30 trail businesses. And when we met in April at the special GOC meeting, part of our, or one of the motions that we made was to implement a comprehensive communication strategy for downtown businesses. So that is in the works right
Okay.
now. So I'm unsure. It's usually quite extraordinary circumstances when we'll actually do a reply letter to the editor. I'm not sure that we need to do this. I think we have a comprehensive strategy that is being rolled out that council would be made aware of, and it's going to be progressive, which should take care of some of this reply. And as you saw probably on Thursday, was that we are getting several, probably daily calls, emails, whether to me or to our deputy corporate administrator or different levels of staff. And so these concerns are also being addressed on a daily basis at City Hall by multiple staff members. So there's a lot of resources that are being put towards just responses to concerns about the vulnerable population in our downtown core. And in general, that isn't out there front and center for council to see as a Trail Times rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Councillor Dobie?
And Mayor Payson, when you mentioned that other members of staff, are they responding in email format or letter format to some of these issues?
Letters are put in the reading file, so you would be seeing them. A lot of them are fielded just by phone calls that come in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, department reports. I guess I should ask, is there any other new business before I close that off? No? Okay, department reports. There's 9.1 and 9.2. The RDKB Building Department report of March 2021 and the Bylaw Enforcement Department report of April 2021. Councillor Santori has made a motion to receive. Do I have someone to second that motion? Councillor Jones, thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on these reports?
No.
No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried.
Very much.
Thanks, Councillor Dobie, 7:44. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey.
Good
Take
night.
care. Bye-bye.